And if you go into journalism, essentially what you want to be, what you're interested in is storytelling. And I've done that in many different ways over the years. And I now want to do it using photography primarily, but also some writing in book form to tell important stories. And I think Xavier is an important story, not just for the graduates and not just for the Catholic community in the Western Pacific, but for anybody who cares about education and the quality of education and what's possible. You know, Xavier's not a perfect place, but it does what it does remarkably well with very, very few resources, financial resources. And I have some background in assessment of educational quality through accreditation. Xavier is the only high school in the Federated States of Micronesia that's accredited by the United States. It's the only one.
Serious?
I'm serious. There are 3 high schools in the Marshall Islands that are accredited. 2 private, 1 public. And I'm not sure about Palau. So there are very few accredited schools in the Western Pacific. And Xavier is the only one in the Federated States of Micronesia. And what it does there, I knew that they were successful. I just didn't know how they were successful. And I had the opportunity to spend a month on the campus, divided between 2 trips, where Father Rich McAuliffe, the director, gave me full access, let me stay on campus. I lived on campus, ate campus food, not so much mackerel, but I ate food, and spent time with the students day to day, faculty day to day. It was very, very close. And I came away from that just amazed by the level of student learning that goes on there. And not just rote learning, but creative learning, where these teachers, and many of whom were just there for 2 years, 1 or 2 years, which is a challenge for continuity, but these teachers were able to present really complex concepts with very few resources and do it really well.
True.
And one of the best examples of that was a science class, sophomores also, where they were learning about DNA. Now, usually when you do DNA, you've got a computer, you can look at a helix, it turns on the computer screen, and you've got all these charts and things like that. They had no computers in the classroom. In fact, they had no power in the classroom for part of the class. But they were using paper, pencils, and tape to make charts of 5 or 6, it was like CSI Chook. So the class was about, there was this person who was dead. They found DNA on this person. And then there were 5 or 6 subjects, suspects. And each suspect had his or her own DNA markers. Mm-hmm. So the students had to make these charts of each subject. They compared it against the subject, the person who died, and the DNA that was on them, all using colored pencils and paper and tape to put these charts together, and then decide who was the likely murderer. It was brilliant. And in the process, they learned just about DNA, what constitutes DNA, and how you use it in a real-world situation. And I was just totally blown away by that. But that's not unique. It happens in almost every classroom in some way like that.
It's true. They really had to improvise for a lot of the learning and.
Absolutely, and you improvise because you don't have the resources, but you make do and you do well. I think one of the most amazing final exams I've ever seen, including all of my college and graduate work, was the Math 4 class, where the teacher, a very good, strict teacher, had the students use calculus to determine whether a certain food item would go up or down depending on whether the population was going to go up and down. So you had to use calculus to determine where the population was going based on certain variables. Mm-hmm. Then you had to look at this certain food product, coconuts, fish, taro, for example, and determine whether the demand for those products would go up or down. But the third thing was then that each group, because the class was broken into groups, had to then prepare food dishes using that food. So whether it was taro or fish or pork, for example, or coconuts.
Yeah.
They had to make food items in the classroom. So they were cooking and making various food items. And then at the end of and they were graded by a panel of teachers. At the end of the class, for their final exam for this class, they put it all together and had lunch. What a great concept. And it was brilliant, actually.
Wish I had that back in my time.
Well, they offered me food, but I was too busy taking pictures. But it looked like a great lunch.
So knowing that you were raised in Marshalls for 20 years, have you ever thought of attending Xavier High School?
Well, I started my educational career at a Catholic mission school in the Marshall Islands. But I finished high school actually here in Hawaii at a boarding school. So it wasn't Xavier, but it was a small boarding school, co-ed. And in going to Xavier many, many years after I went to high school,
Yeah.
I was able to see a lot of similarities between the issues that we dealt with when I was a teenager in a boarding school. And some of the same issues, different spin at Xavier High School in Chuk.
You get to see both worlds.
I did, and some of the Xavier kids had it easy compared to what we had.
So, do you believe that Xavier High School is the best high school in Chuk, FSM, Micronesia? What do you think? A lot of people think so.
I don't know every high school in the FSM, obviously, but I can tell you with great certainty that Xavier is an exceptionally good school, and it's a remarkably good school. And I think anybody who goes there, who has who is fortunate enough to be accepted and survive the Xavier process, which is very brutal in some ways. It's tough. It's a very tough place to get through. That they're going to get an outstanding education. But beyond that, it's a remarkable community. And I think, I was impressed by a lot. But what really impressed me the most was the fact that, well, I look at the class that graduated in May of 2010. And to me, it crystallized what's so special about that school. Not those students in particular, but what the class went through. There were between 900 and 1,000 students who applied for 50 positions in 2006. Of the 50 who were accepted, 43 showed up in August of 2006. Of those 43 students who started the Xavier process in September of 2006, 29 graduated in May of 2010. And those students, because I went with them on their senior retreat, which was a really special occasion, those students were tighter than brothers and sisters. And watching the personal dynamic, when you're on this little island, you could throw a stone across it in some places, and it's all sand and coconut trees. When you're on this little island with no other distractions, and you're just watching people interact with each other, and it was really the last time that they were all going to gather as a group. And by themselves, to see how they interacted, and some of the students, not everyone's at the same level in the class, and to see how some of the students protected the ones who weren't as socially adept, and there were a few of those, just goofballs who sometimes wanted to slap on the head.
Yeah,
but
always people like that.
But the other students really protected them and ran interference for them, or how they worked together and just made things happen without a lot of adult supervision was quite remarkable. And I had never seen that before, even when I was in a small boarding school. So.
In your book, you mentioned that you're looking for why Xavier High School is successful. Did you find out why?
I think so. It comes down to a number of elements. First and foremost, it's a rigorous academic program. It's tough, and for example, they now require 2 years of Latin for freshmen and sophomores, and you have to pass it. It's not something you can blow off. It's a tough academic program, and they expect you to do well. The second thing is that it's a learning community defined by discipline. And I don't mean harsh discipline, but I mean there are very high expectations for the students, for their academic behavior and their personal behavior. And what makes this so unique is that if you look at government in Micronesia today, there aren't a lot of negative consequences for not being successful. So if you can't run the power plant and power's off half the day, there are no consequences for that. If the roads aren't good, there are no consequences for that. But at Xavier, students are taught that if you don't act a certain way, if you aren't good enough in class, you're not going to survive there, and you're not going to graduate. And that's a tough lesson, but boy, it's a great lesson that there are consequences in life.
Yeah.
And if you mess up, you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's not being taught really in society today, in a lot of places. I think the third thing that's very important about Xavier is that it's a community built on respect. And there's a lot, respect is expected, both of your respect for others and your self-respect. And fourth, of course, very important, is it's a community based on faith and values. Now, you don't have to be Catholic to go there. About two-thirds, three-quarters of the students are, but it's a community where there are clear values, and we live in a world today where values are pretty weak, and there's not a lot of focus on values. And I think that gives students a structure for going through a difficult, being a teenager is a difficult time in life. Lots of changes, lots of new things to think about, lots of anxieties. But it gives them a structure to be confident about making decisions about life and making choices. So I think that's what it comes down to.
So the next question, this is just like an outsider's perspective. So we want to ask you this. Do you think that the FSM government can stand alone after the Compact 2 ends in 2023?
I think there will be an FSM government, as there will be a Marshall Islands government and Palau government once the compacts end.